Hi guys. Today we are talking about my favorite film of all time, and that's Hard to Be a God.
Это не Земля, это другая планета. Такая же, как Земля, но не догнавшая ее лет на 800.
I will say it's the most important film of our lifetime because it's made in 2013, and I don't think there's anything that could come out that will top this. Like confidently, I think it's a once in a lifetime event that a film like this could be made, and so much so that rest in peace, Oleski Germain or German.
R.I.P.
Sorry. He died before he finished it, and his family edited the film for him. I've been talking about this film for like 3 years straight, and no one will watch it except our savior, Alec Bonk, who just finally watched it.
Yeah,
And
great movie, man. Thanks for recommending this. For lack of a better word, masterpiece.
I think so. To be honest, I haven't watched his other films. I didn't even know. This film feels like you discover it and then you go, "What's this?" and then you're just kind of blown away.
This film feels like, you know, that moment when humanity finally has contact with like another advanced civilization and we get like a time capsule from them. This movie feels like a movie from another planet that you were gifted.
It feels like almost found footage or like documentary like, but shots like a Tarkovsky movie makes with Monty Python. I guess we're getting ahead of ourselves, but the film is about a planet, not Earth, that has rejected the Renaissance and is plummeting into the Dark Ages. And they have, it's vague, but it's not vague. It's very heavy-handed with the narration up front.
Mhm.
But from what we can gather, there are astronaut scientists that come from Earth and go to this planet. It feels very loosey-goosey, but so intentional. Like everything is so planned that it really blew my mind in what is actually capable in a film.
You've been for a while nagging me to watch this movie, if for good cause. And I finally broke and watched it. And I remember it was like pretty late. It was a weekday, and I was like, "Fuck, dude, I'm not gonna watch this whole thing. Like, it's 3 hours. It's already 11. I gotta take a piss." And I started the movie, and I couldn't take my eyes off of it. It was incredible. And I found that I found myself trying to talk to a lot of people about it, and the same thing comes up that you mentioned, where you try to describe it, and I'm like, yeah, it's like kind of a sci-fi, but that doesn't matter at all to the film. That all happens before the events of the film. Then we pick up in this like middle-aged slush with this backward kind of group of people that it's almost like a distant cousin to humans. And what I really liked about it too, which was interesting, is like they really set up in the beginning with that whole flute stuff. I love the flute.
Like the jazz. It opens up with like jazz.
It's like soulful jazz, but also a little sad.
Yeah.
Nice tune. And it's the only nice like art type of thing in this world, and all the slaves around him are like
they're plugging their ears almost like dirt.
Like everyone who inhabits this world who isn't, you know, human, who one of the 30 scientists that come over, they can not only do they reject this stuff, it like repulses them.
It's like
they love the grime and the dirt and the slime and the filth of the uncivilized society they live in. So
I think that's a good point to bring up. Like I've never seen a film that's this dirty. Like every inch is covered in shit, and in like it makes you realize that every other medieval kind of film we've seen is just like kind of clean.
It's way too unrealistic. Yeah, what it was.
Yeah.
When like you feel like you need to bathe, you need to wash your hands after washing.
Yeah, it really doesn't feel like they have running water there. Like it genuinely doesn't feel like that. And then and you're bringing up like how they're in the Dark Ages and how he's playing the jazz. Remember that one scene where he's walking through this cave and there's like the Mona Lisa, and like he pretends he's painting it. Like
that was an interesting scene. Yeah.
It almost it feels like it's almost like a cave painting that was rejected. You know, it's like they didn't allow that to get any further than it's just a cave painting. And that like they're trying to say that's primitive because they've kind of excelled from, I don't know, it's so interesting.
It already looked like it was forgotten, and almost like, you know, like one of those old, you know, you find like the old Greek like frescoes or whatever. It looked like that all worn out, and
it's almost like a catacomb painting or something.
Yeah, it was such a unique world, and what I love too, and what it really blew my mind with about this movie is I've never seen filmmaking like it, where the camera, like the environment and the people interact with the camera. So literally there's just frames of like people sitting there, and there's just like birds flying at the camera. Like someone's off the camera throwing a bird at the camera, or muck, or someone's hands hitting the lens.
They'll put like a chicken in front of the camera and like wiggle it or something.
У него руки в крови и весят в крови. Так было всегда. И так будет. Таков наш примар по габарям.
It's so awesome. And then like, I mean, whoever that focus puller is, who's been getting that sharp focus pull for 13 years, you know, I'm into that guy.
It's not like a whole 1 minute. It's not like a whole one take where it's like 10 minutes. That's a one take, but it'll have these 1 minute to 2 or 3 minute breaths where the camera's just kind of floating through the scene. And I guess like the premise of the film is him traveling through Arkanoth to get to the tobacconist. And so he goes through, it's almost hard to believe that it's one location in a weird way, that you're traveling through this kind of like castle manor and like look like area around it. And it's such a free movie. It's just so uninhibited by like any rules that it's so like it's mind blowing. Like you want to just keep watching it.
Well, it felt like the shots, the movie itself, but even deeper, the shots felt so alive because there's so much happening. People just crossing frame, like we said, chickens and shit are just flying at the frame. And like even there's moments where I was so like blown away by this, like background would just walk by and then like notice the camera and be like,
oh yeah, they'll swing their head and like you'll even hear like bones crack in their neck. The sound design. Oh, can we talk about the sound design?
Sounded great. The sound design was incredible.
So I showed it to a group of friends that are not really into film at all, but they love movies. You know, who doesn't love movies? And I showed it to them, and immediately one of my friends go, "The sound design is really bad." and I go, oh no, it's like I didn't know explain it to him that it was recorded in a specific way. Like it's
Yeah.
recorded almost in this old school way
Mono.
where
It's just right
yeah,
in the face. Yeah.
mono not mixed at all, and not every sound is.
I found that very immersive. I like the sound design.
Oh, I thought it was great. It's so textural. Like you could your ears like literally like it falls into your ears.
Well, that's what's interesting too. Is it almost like you mentioned doc. It almost feels docu style. The way like you almost feel like you're a camera crew that went with these scientists to this planet, and everyone's just looking at the camera like, what the fuck. But another interesting thing about the world that I found cool, and maybe I didn't follow it completely, but like they had a whole, even though it was this backwards world, they still had a whole like religious section, like all these monks. And I'm wondering, was that maybe another scientist? Because I was always confused if the people who were smart were the other scientists. Just
So you're talking about like that really like, for lack of a better term, very fat guy, very much a fat guy, and like that den.
the antagonist.
Yeah,
Not him. There was a dude earlier when he like our main character got a bag when he was riding the donkey backwards, and he had the donkey poop in the bag, and then he tied it up and threw it at the priest.
yeah, I remember that. Oh, when they're praying.
And that guy brought a fish to him. That's why I thought it was interesting. He brought a fish to him, and he placed it in front of his feet after like cursing him out. And he goes, "This is our forgiveness." He's like, "Don't laugh at the faith or something." And I was like, "That's really interesting for this whole backwards culture." There's people like that there who still are like, usually they wouldn't be giving fish and gifts. They'd be like pooping on you, or
Yeah, it's like the opposite where they expect gifts.
mm-hmm.
That's a good point. I don't think I even picked up on that, to be honest. It's something else that struck me was, I don't know if anyone watches the trailer and they like you hear this metal guitar playing. It's like, wow. I don't think there's any music in the movie.
I was gonna bring that up. That was something that I noticed, but I thought that really was a good choice. There's no music. There's just the flute.
The flute just and then something else that I loved is, and this is can I get into like a spoiler?
Totally.
Okay.
Most people watch it anyways.
Yeah, it's not even like a spoiler. Even if you go into this with the mindset, I think it might help your viewing experiences. There's like no action at all. For a night movie, he goes, Dom, what's his name? I was gonna call him Dom Ramada. What's his name? Is it Dom Ramada?
Don, they're all Don. Yeah, Don Rava or something.
Yeah.
Who, the main guy?
Yeah, the main guy. I forgot his name. But it goes. He only kills in his sleep. They're like, that's how it opens, and he's just like he can't. He I don't even know what that means.
They said it was like a sin to kill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I love the character, the Baron, where the guy who's swinging the sword around the big.
Yeah, he was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, he was
another nobleman, another smart guy.
I couldn't tell because of I feel like maybe he was a version of someone who was on the brink of a evolution of like a culture, but he still feels more medieval than our main character.
But then there was like, sorry to go on a tangent here, but then there was the guy early on when Don Rivera he's like leaving the town, he's walking on his horse, and he's like the one scientist of the lower people there, and he's like, I made you this, and he was like so dumb, than the other guys. That's why I was like, oh, that's what I was wondering, are some of the guys noblemen trying to hide as normal people, since apparently they were talking about that the people rose up against like the university they built and burnt it down and maybe killed some people. You remember they were like hanging people because they thought
and they were dripping with like glitter.
It's an intelligent movie. There's a lot. Like if you like Kubrick and that type of shit, that's like kind of ambiguous. Like it doesn't explain anything. It just shows you. This is a type of movie that you really like.
Yeah, it's a movie that does not spoon feed you. It's a movie that kind of literally, like, the camera is thrown into this world, and you're left to make your mind up about it. And
It's a good way to put it.
Я всех здесь убью.
I think it's also a good point. Good thing to say. This is a Russian movie, and I feel like it's only a movie that could be made by a Russian because it's. I can see how it could have been made by about the standards of their time and just living. It's a. And also we should bring up it's a Tchaikovsky brother adaptation of a book, or whatever, however you say it. And they wrote.
That's who wrote Stalker.
Yeah, they wrote Stalker. They wrote what was that? Solaris.
Solaris, yeah.
Yeah. So they yeah, it kind of feels like the last remnant of like the Tarkovsky kind of world.
Classical sci-fi, Russian sci-fi.
And don't you get some Andrei Rublev vibes from it sometimes? Like
Yeah.
it was I thought that like the first time because I saw this before Andrei Rublev. And when I saw Andrei Rublev, I was like, oh shit. I was like, this makes some sense.
Andrei Rublev's much older brother, Grizzly
Yeah.
brother. Yeah.
It was so that's kind of how I felt about it.
Something else I thought was interesting watching it. Two things I want to mention. There's like a tank at one moment. That was pretty
Only for like a quick second, right?
One shot. Comes out of the fog, and then there's people on the back of it acting crazy, like, oh, and then it drives away. That was like the most Mad Maxy part.
Yeah.
And another thing that I thought was interesting, did you notice this? A lot of the dudes had those big fluffy jackets.
Yeah, those bands.
Did you look close to those jackets, dude? They
No.
look like spacesuits.
Oh, yes, yeah.
I thought that was a really cool detail. I was like, oh, they don't explain this, but that looks like a spacesuit. It looks like insulation.
Yeah, they're almost like tubes, like almost like vintage sci-fi spacesuits.
Exactly. That's what, yeah. So I thought that was a cool detail.
I don't think I picked up on that though.
I just loved it because of that and many reasons we mentioned. But it really, it let my imagination run wild too, which was cool with it too. Like noticing things like that and just like living in the world, not being explained anything, just making my own like interpretation of it. So it was a visual feast.
Yeah, it's almost like I tell people to watch it almost like you're going to a museum because it's not like it's not saying it's not like a film is definitely a disservice. It's more than a film, but I think your average viewer can't watch it like that. Otherwise they'll be disappointed. Like, have you read reviews like on IMDb about it?
Not much. I haven't.
Some are pretty funny. A lot say it's a masterpiece, so I'm giving credit to like 90% of people that watch it. But a lot say, I will never get 3 hours of my life back. I'm like, why'd you watch the whole thing? You know, it's like
yeah, how could you watch that if you hated it? Like
I told like on my birthday I made my whole family watch it, and they couldn't get through 10 minutes.
Oh man. What turned them off?
Oh, I'm sure the poop in the face.
The poop in the face. The coolest part of the film that my like fucking eyeballs were blown out of my ball sack is the scene like when they were showing the torture machine, which was that part actually made me go, ugh. Like wooden dildo, and they're like, we're gonna kill the witches or whatever. It was like all bloody. And he goes over to the one part and he picks up like the muck and he rubs it on his eyes.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it was such a cool visual.
That's like, I think it's such an iconic visual.
Something else did you notice too is earlier in the movie he has a handkerchief and he keeps having all his workers around him trying to make a specific like gel for him. Almost looked like a jelly, and he'd rub it on his nose.
Oh yeah, and he would huff it, right?
Yeah, so it was almost like he was trying to stop the smell, is what I was. And like, so he's putting like.
I interpreted it like that too, and also one shot that blew me away was it's like a shot of like an entire army at one point, where it's at nighttime and there's like literally you can't even count how many people are on screen, and it's just I'm like, I don't want to. It just makes a lot of films look like they're not trying in ways, including my own, including my own, and so I
This film really dwarfs you of the imaginative possibilities of that cinema offer that we haven't even began to tap. That.
yeah, it's almost untouched. It doesn't care about correctness. It doesn't care about like almost anything. It's almost nihilistic, but I don't know. It's also the choice of black and white. We didn't tell anyone it's black and white.
Black and white. And it's Russian.
Beautiful. And it's Russian. And
I should have mentioned that in the first minute.
yeah. You should have. Before we go on, I just want to tell everyone it's free on YouTube. Just look it up. I'm not telling you to torrent it. Someone put it on YouTube. Someone put all the Russian movies on YouTube. Just look it up. It's worth it.
I will say too, I rented it on YouTube, $3.99. So if you want to support the filmmakers, you can also rent it, or you can watch for free if it's up there.
So Michael, I did that too the first time I saw it. Michael, did you have the glitch in yours?
I did, yeah.
Where it
just go really loud and stop for a second. That was a little annoying. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like towards the last like 15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
Dude, everyone was like, great movie, but like that's the thing I like about YouTube movies is people can comment. So it's funny.
Little community, little forum. So here's some moments I love from the movie that really blew my mind. There's like one long take where it goes for a bit, and then some dude just walks into frame, turns around, and then blows his nose and snot comes out. And I remember just going like, there's no, like, how many times can you redo that shot? Do you put things up there? Like, that was just like,
yeah,
it felt so spontaneous and organic, and that was beautiful. Then there's a scene, Don Rava walks into the door. This part was epic. He like opens the door.
Oh, and the owl.
Fucking owl comes on his shoulder and just sits there.
Dude.
He just sits and he like stares at it and he like throws it off. It was so incredible to view.
It's so sick.
I was just gonna mention to the last one. I was like, this is an incredible image. Is when they're like, the Baron's gonna go fight the army, and they cut to outside and it's just pouring, and he's just sitting there in his space
with a million arrows,
with a bunch of arrows in him, and that's what that made me think that he was one of the humans.
Yeah.
Or from Earth, because he also had the same jacket.
Yeah.
They were buddy, and he was kind of smart, you know. Like he would just spin his sword, and all the other people were like, "Oh."
Well, I'm curious if like, do you think it's that life became addicting for the Baron in a way where Dom was kind of not affected by it, kind of controlled it, and maybe like you're a scientist, but you maybe like lose yourself in that world kind of thing. Dude,
I was gonna say here was my interpretation. Definitely talk about our interpretations of the movie. It's very up to interpretation. And I'm sure if I read the Wikipedia, it would answer a lot. But mine was, there's these human scientists went to this planet. A couple of years went by. The people revolted against the free knowledge that these people were like, hey, we're trying to help you. And they're like, fuck you, we like our muck. So they burnt down all the shit they built, killed most of the people. So the people left had to hide. So this guy, Don Reva, was pretending to be a god, and he just happened to pretend to be one of their pagan gods. Remember, he's like, I cut ears off because he can't kill anybody. He's like, I breathe fire out of my mouth. And these people are so like brain dead at this other place, they almost believe it. If you notice, there's many moments where there's like an extra, he'll like turn his back to an extra, and they like want to stab him. I thought that was really interesting. They want but they almost don't know how to stab somebody. That's how like dumb these people are. And then there's some of the scientists still living there, the Baron being one. Think about this, dude. You move there to this muck place. You have to pretend to be stupid, like for 5 years. You just like fall into that. So I was just he almost like became delusional and had to become that from the way I looked at it.
Well, didn't you? I did feel like there was something special about our main character, especially because it was armor towards the end, where he dresses up like a bull, and like he gets like he almost like revs up, and like I kind of felt like he could take on the whole army at that point, because like
Yeah.
maybe you're right where he did make them believe that, but he also made me believe it, you know, in a weird way. It's like, yeah, it's
I almost thought that they were like, he's a normal human and they're so inept that they don't even know, like, you notice they don't even know how to stab somebody most of the time. That's kind of how I pictured it. And he knows how to use, it's almost like a, the sheep herder in the sense of like a politician and the people. He knows how to use symbols like the bull mask to scare his foes is kind of what I looked. He's almost like using these less primitive mindseted people's shit against them, you know? And
yeah.
at the end of the movie, spoilers, he like becomes like a monk with a shaved head. It looks so cool, dude.
Yeah, he's like hanging out by like a pond or like a little pool, right, or something like that.
At the last part, like after he defeats the army, and then he's just sitting there, and then it like cuts to, I'm guessing years later, and he just has a big beard, but his head's all shaved.
Yeah.
It's like,
Okay, that's something else I want to bring up. I love physical metamorphosis in films with main characters. Like, I guess a quick one would be in just complete opposite kind of film, but Good Time when Robert Pattinson dyes his hair blonde in the middle, or that like yeah, middle of the film. It feels like
he goes,
our character.
yeah, after that, he's like a different identity.
Yeah, I think it's such a cool thing to pull off in a film.
Well, it's like that whole thing. That's what film's great at showing. It's like the whole thing of like a character needs to go somewhere to change, when really it's inside of you the whole time. You don't need to go somewhere for change. You could change right now if you really wanted to. But sometimes you need that metaphysical, metaphorical like journey to become a better person. But okay, so all that shit was awesome. But here's how this whole movie made me feel. Okay, I remember watching that movie, and this is why you mentioned something. It's more than a film, and this kind of plays into that. This is more than a film, because I remember watching this movie, and the feeling I got closing my laptop and think about this was gratitude for the world I live in, because I was like, I could live in that shit, and that shit is awful. So it actually made me grateful for like the world in today's age that we live in, that it could be that, dude. It could have easily went down that path. And also so many like anthropological thoughts of like, how did a bunch of like dumb dudes come together and make a civilization? We could have ended down that like blumbering, sludge-filled death, everyone gets killed type of like society. So I found that it almost hopeful for humanity.
Yeah, no, it's like good thing we got past that, because if we were stuck in that, because it's once you're stuck, I guess. It's like yeah, what it did for me like was just like it was almost like you don't know what a movie is kind of feeling. It was like it felt good in a way, not like, oh, I ruined my whole life by like watching like just like straightforward cinema. It's like, yeah, and that's not all I've been doing, but it was like, wow, there's so much more you can do with a movie. And I don't know how to explain it. It was just the scenes that they came up with were so inspiring, just from a writing perspective, because it was just clearly not the writer writing it. It was clearly whoever wrote it was immersed in whatever he was writing. It was not. I don't feel like I felt like a writer wrote this. It felt it exists essentially.
Utterly unique. Yeah, it's not like something where you're watching like some shitty Disney Channel TV show and you're like, yeah, I feel the writer preaching to me right now. This felt real. I think it blows a portal open for what's possible with a movie.
Yeah,
that's why it's so mind-blowing, because you're like, I didn't know you could do this.
Yeah, and also like even get it made, but even like do it and then get it made.
You might die in the process, but dude, he left behind something special. And that's why I think anyone still watching this should go fucking turn this off and go watch it right now.
So I was just reading in the My Hard to Be Your God booklet that
And come back.
his son was saying 99% of the things he talked about was cinema. He never talked about cars. He never talked about soccer. And this is just quotes from the book. But like his only interest in the world was cinema. And I think that speaks loudly in this because that's what he made. He made pure cinema.
He made pure fucking cinema.